Welcome to the channel, friends. We're so glad you're here with us today. If you're enjoying the story so far, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. We believe every story has the power to connect us, and we can't wait to share even more exciting and thought-provoking tales with you. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next special story coming your way tomorrow. We're just getting started, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming up next. The ultimate April Fool's prank that backfired in front of the royal guard. On April Fool's Day, Buckingham Palace stood tall under the bright morning sun, its historic stones bathed in a soft golden glow. Tour buses began arriving earlier than usual, their engines humming as they slowly parked in front of the palace gates. Eager tourists poured out, cameras in hand, ready to witness the famous changing of the guard ceremony. Among the crowd was Jake Turner, a 26-year-old from the US with an Australian accent that cut through the air as he bantered with his friends. His eyes scanned the scene with a confident grin, adjusting his expensive sunglasses. "This is going to be epic, mates," Jake announced, his voice loud enough for those around him to hear. He had a modest online following back in the States, built through a series of pranks and videos that pushed the limits of humor. His claim to fame was creating consequence-free pranks, always towing the line between funny and controversial, but never crossing into real trouble. He had carefully crafted a persona of audacity, and today was no different. Buckingham Palace, with its historic significance, was the perfect stage for Jake to take his antics to the next level. His friends, Tom and Liam, exchanged uneasy glances as they followed behind, cameras already rolling. Tom, more cautious than the others, hesitated, lowering his voice. "Maybe we should just do the usual tourist thing, take some pictures, and move on," he suggested. These guards aren't exactly known for their sense of humor. But Jake dismissed the idea with a laugh, running a hand through his tousled hair. They're paid to stand there and look pretty. Besides, everyone does the usual try to make them laugh routine. I'm going bigger. The gleam in his eye said it all. He wasn't just here for a laugh. He was here for something viral. With a chuckle, he turned back to his friends, who were now reluctant but still following his lead. The game was on. Jake was about to take on the royal guard, but what he didn't realize was that today, he wasn't just dealing with a ceremonial soldier. He was about to face a man with years of real combat experience and training. What Jake thought would be the ultimate April Fool's prank was about to lead him into a situation he couldn't control. As Jake's plan unfolded, the crowd around him began to shift, drawn in by his increasing antics. The tourists, eager for a laugh, started gathering around, some even chuckling at Jake's boldness. His friends, Tom and Liam, were clearly uncomfortable. Tom had a nervous look in his eyes, and his voice barely carried over the rising excitement. "Jake, maybe we should just take the pictures and go. This isn't funny anymore. It's crossing a line," he whispered, but Jake wasn't listening. He was already deep into his performance, oblivious to the growing tension. Jake circled the royal guard, Sergeant Chris Williams, with exaggerated steps, his arms swinging in mock precision. "Look at him," Jake muttered to his friends, loud enough for the nearby tourists to hear. "Standing there like a mannequin. What do they do? Pick them based on who can look the most constipated." A ripple of laughter passed through the crowd, but there were disapproving glances too, especially from a British couple who exchanged glances of concern. Jake didn't care. The more discomfort he caused, the more alive he felt. This was his moment. He moved closer to Sergeant Williams, his grin widening as he pulled out his phone. "This whole thing is just a costume, right? Fancy dress-up, not real military," he scoffed. His voice rang with mockery as he walked around the stoic guard, snapping photos as though he were the star of the show. The air around him felt tense, but Jake couldn't feel it. He was too caught up in the idea of a viral moment. But the guard remained motionless, unbothered, his eyes forward. For a moment, Jake thought he saw a flicker of something in the guard's eyes, something sharp. But he dismissed it, chalking it up to the man's stoic discipline. "These guys are just statues," Jake scoffed again, turning to Liam. "What's the worst that can happen? It's all a game." The crowd was starting to pull back, some visibly uncomfortable, others unsure whether to laugh or be offended. An elderly woman gently pulled her children away, recognizing the signs of a situation escalating beyond harmless fun. Jake was so focused on his performance that he didn't see the shift happening around him. The mood was no longer one of lighthearted amusement. It was turning into something much darker. Come on, let's just do it. We've got this. Jake urged his friends, ignoring the growing discomfort. He wasn't backing down. He had a plan, and he was going to execute it, no matter the cost. Little did he know, this would be the moment that changed everything. Jake's confidence had reached its peak as he prepared for the grand finale. The crowd, now more subdued, watched with a mixture of curiosity and growing discomfort. Jake, completely oblivious to the shift in atmosphere, was determined to make this prank the one that would put him on the map. His friends, Tom and Liam, had taken a step back, their reluctance almost palpable. But Jake wasn't listening anymore. He was in full performer mode, and he knew exactly what was coming next. With a flourish, Jake reached into his backpack, pulling out what looked like an expensive professional camera. "All right, folks, it's time for the main event," he announced, his voice loud and clear. "Get ready for the ultimate royal guard portrait." A few tourists raised their actual cameras, sensing the dramatic moment unfolding before them, though for very different reasons than Jake imagined. Jake grinned widely as he adjusted the camera, making sure to play up the moment. What he didn't realize was that the object in his hand wasn't a camera at all. It was a high-quality water gun, expertly disguised to look like a professional camera, a prop he'd spent nearly $200 modifying for this very prank. He aimed it at Sergeant Chris Williams, who stood motionless, unbothered by the growing tension around him. Jake, with his usual flair for the dramatic, began a countdown, playing to his dwindling audience. 3, 2, 1, he shouted, and with that, the water gun discharged with a force that sent a stream of water directly into the guard's face. The entire courtyard went silent. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Not Jake, not the onlookers, not even the security personnel who had started to move in, too late to stop the action. Water splashed across Sergeant Williams's immaculate uniform, darkening the scarlet fabric as it dripped down his bare skin cap. Jake, expecting laughter and applause, was met with stunned silence. His triumphant grin began to fade as he looked around at the horrified expressions of the crowd. The silence hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating. Jake's friends, who had been filming just moments ago, now seemed to shrink back, their faces pale with embarrassment. The crowd, which had once been eager for entertainment, now looked away in discomfort. Jake tried to salvage the situation, weakly offering, "It's just water, mate. April Fools, right?" But the words felt hollow. Something in the guard's unwavering gaze sent a chill down Jake's spine. It wasn't the reaction he had planned for, and in that instant, he began to realize the gravity of what he had just done. Jake's heart raced as he stared at Sergeant Chris Williams, who remained perfectly still despite the water dripping down his face. For a moment, the silence that followed felt suffocating, almost unbearable. The crowd had gone completely quiet, their phones lowered as they watched the scene unfold. Jake stood frozen, still clutching the water gun, his smug expression quickly faltering as he realized no one was laughing. His friends, Tom and Liam, had stepped back, their faces a mix of discomfort and guilt. The situation was escalating far beyond anything Jake had ever anticipated. Sergeant Williams's gaze remained steady, piercing through Jake with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. It wasn't the reaction Jake had expected. He had imagined the guard breaking character, laughing along with the crowd. But instead, he was met with a calm, unwavering soldier whose eyes now burned with a quiet fury. Jake's fingers tightened around the water gun, but the situation had already spiraled beyond his control. His earlier bravado quickly dissipated, replaced by the gnawing realization that he had made a serious mistake. Before he could even speak, the guard's movements were swift and calculated, like a predator responding to a threat. In a single, fluid motion, Sergeant Williams stepped forward, his gloved hand wrapping around Jake's wrist with a firm, controlled grip. Jake, taken completely off guard, tried to pull away, but it was useless. The guard's strength was undeniable. His grip didn't hurt, but it was unyielding. Every ounce of Jake's confidence evaporated in that moment. "It's just a prank," Jake stammered, his voice now tinged with nervousness. The crowd was still silent, watching in anticipation, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Security personnel had arrived, but they hesitated at first, unsure of how to proceed. Sergeant Williams didn't let go of Jake. His eyes locked onto him, speaking volumes without uttering a word. It was clear this was no longer a joke. The guard's calm demeanor, despite being assaulted in front of the crowd, spoke of years of training, of a man who had faced far more serious situations than a tourist prank. Assaulting a king's guard is a criminal offense, Sergeant Williams finally said, his voice low but firm. The words hit Jake like a ton of bricks. He had crossed a line, and there would be consequences. Jake's bravado vanished entirely as he realized just how wrong he had been. He wasn't facing a man in a costume. He was facing a trained soldier with a duty to protect, and his actions had made him vulnerable. The realization sank in like a heavy weight, and Jake, for the first time, understood the true meaning of respect. The tension in the air was palpable as Jake stood there, held firmly by Sergeant Chris Williams. The crowd, once eager for a laugh, had fallen into a heavy silence, their eyes wide with a mix of shock and disbelief. Jake's heart pounded in his chest, the adrenaline of the prank quickly fading into cold, hard regret. His friends, Tom and Liam, stood at the edge of the circle, their faces pale, their cameras lowered. They had witnessed the prank spiral out of control, and now it was clear that Jake's actions had gone too far. "Just a prank, mate," Jake muttered weakly, his voice lacking the confidence it once held. His eyes darted nervously from the guard to the growing number of security personnel moving in. The reality of the situation was sinking in. What had started as an attempt to create a viral moment was now spiraling into something far more serious. The smirk that had been plastered on his face only moments ago had completely vanished, replaced by a look of genuine panic. Sergeant Williams, with an expression that remained impassive and professional, didn't respond immediately. His grip on Jake's wrist remained firm, but he didn't tighten it. He didn't need to. The message was clear. This was no longer a joke. Jake felt the weight of his actions as Williams slowly spoke, his voice measured and steady, carrying the authority of someone who had seen and done far more than Jake could ever imagine. "Assaulting a king's guard is a criminal offense," Williams said, his words like a punch to the gut. Jake swallowed hard, the realization crashing over him like a wave. He had crossed a line, and now he was paying the price. The security officers, who had been hesitant at first, were now fully engaged, moving in to take control of the situation. The crowd had shifted too, some of them watching with disapproval, others looking away in embarrassment. Jake opened his mouth to speak again, but no words came out. The prank, which had seemed like a good idea in the moment, now felt like the biggest mistake of his life. He looked at the guard, who stood with perfect composure, the water still dripping from his uniform, and something inside Jake shifted. In that moment, he understood. This wasn't a costume, and this wasn't a joke. This was a soldier with a history, a duty, and a sense of pride that Jake had completely underestimated. "I'm sorry," Jake said, his voice cracking as the gravity of the situation settled in. He hadn't expected to feel this way. He hadn't expected to be humbled by his own actions. But standing there, facing a man who had dedicated his life to service, Jake realized just how wrong he had been. The guard didn't respond, but Jake knew the lesson had been learned. The crowd, which had once been full of excitement, now quietly dispersed, leaving behind a moment of profound understanding. As the security officers began to guide Jake away, he turned back, casting one last glance at Sergeant Williams, who had returned to his post with unwavering dignity. We'd love to hear what you think about this story. What are your thoughts on Jake's prank and the way it all unfolded? Do you think he went too far, or was it just an innocent attempt at humor? Leave a comment below and share your perspective. We're really interested in hearing from you. It's easy to get caught up in the thrill of a prank, but sometimes it's important to understand the bigger picture. This story really makes you think about respect, tradition, and the consequences of our actions, especially when we don't fully understand what's at stake. Have you ever witnessed a prank go too far? Or maybe you've been in a situation where something that seemed funny at first took a serious turn. We want to know what you've experienced. Share your own stories with us in the comments below. And if you're enjoying these kinds of stories, Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. There's plenty more where this came from. Make sure to click that bell icon too, so you'll be the first to know when we post our next video. Your thoughts and feedback mean a lot to us, so join the conversation. We can't wait to hear what you have to say.